Here's our collecting duct. This part we have not talked about either. So this part right here, the loop and Henley, and this part right here has to do with saving water. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Actually, the saving water part. Okay, are we all right? Okay. So let's look at the total body of water. You have about 40 liters. It makes up about 60% of the body weight. Yes, you do need to know this. And I actually might go into a problem or something along the line calculation-wise. So I give you a person that weighs 150 pounds. How much of his weight is water? Right? So how would you do that? Yes, thank you. Let's see if, yes, that's perfect. Let's see if everybody else got that. Okay? So if a man weighs 150 pounds, how much of his body weight consists of water?
60%.
Yeah, so you would calculate it, you multiply that times 60%, and that'll give you your body weight. Okay? And so what you have there, they have what they have called the standard man, the standard woman, they have a certain weight, whatever, based upon European ancestry and that kind of stuff. So that's what you're seeing there. But you can calculate any time with given any weight. Okay, the body water is separated into two areas. One is that is inside the cell, right here. So we talked about this as ICF. So did you guys cover this already? Okay. So because if you guys have, then we'll move on to other slides, other stuff. So intracellular ICF. Okay, and then the other part is the ECF, extracellular. So we've been talking about this all semester. So this is the fluid surrounding the cells. This is the fluid inside the cells, separated by the cell membrane. Okay, so the ECF right here is what you should separate. So you should write ECF, and under that you should have two categories. One is going to be the interstitial fluid, and two is going to be the blood plasma. So ECF, so you have your ICF here, that's basically inside the cell, and then the other half of the water is separated into the ECF. Under ECF, you should have number 1 is interstitial, number 2 is the blood plasma. Okay, categorize. Because otherwise what you see there is going to be hard to digest. So you've got to, okay. So your extracellular fluid, the interstitial fluid, this is fluid surrounding the cells. This is going to be what the lymph fluid will be, and then here's your blood plasma that we've been talking about. Okay, so any questions? We're okay so far? You have it all written down? Okay. So note that the values, the actual liters, so this PowerPoint's on Canvas, so you can access it. So note that the values for the volume is going to change depending upon the weight of the individual. Okay? So don't memorize the actual values, you need to memorize the percents before you do the calculations. These are the major sources of water intake, and that's going to be on the left-hand side, so the majority is going to be food. So the body doesn't make water if you're thirsty. When you are thirsty, your body's going to set into motion. That's what we're going to look at today, how to bring on thirst, and then also how to actually save the water that you do intake. The vast majority of the water is going to be in food and beverages that you're going to ingest. So you have to bring in fresh water. That's why someone on a deserted island in the desert with no water is going to die. So, unlike a kangaroo rat that could live a little longer. And then this is what you put out. The vast majority of your water is going to be lost is urine. Okay? So remember we started off with 180 liters per day of GFR. You remember that? Okay, so let's do that. How many of us are in La La Land right now already? Okay? Yeah, because you guys are talking back there.
No.
No? Because you're eating back there.
I'm hungry.
Oh, okay. So what's our GFR for a typical GFR for a man? 125 what? Milliliters per minute. How much is that per day? So calculate it. 24 hours. Now this is your average GFR for a man. How much is it? How much is it per day? So when you do these calculations, there'll be problems on the lecture final. You have to show your work. So make sure you practice setting it up. If you simply just give me the answer, then you're going to get it wrong. So you can't do it in your head. Okay? You've got to make sure you set up the work.
Do you have to know the knowledges or just the percents?
What do we get so far? How many milliliters per hour? So this is the per minute. How much was it per hour?
7,500.
How much was it per hour?
7,500.
7,500. Okay. Milliliters per hour. How much was it in 24 hours?
180,000.
180,000 milliliters or 180 liters per day or 24-hour period. Good. Okay, so this is how much goes through the nephrons, and the urine reduction that we have is only 1 to 2 liters per day. So that's how much we actually put out in the urine. And there actually is an obligatory type of obligatory urine volume. So you're going like, well, what if I don't drink water at all? What if I don't ingest anything? Well, there is, we produce about 600 milliosmoles of solutes that have to be expelled from the body. It's expelled from the body in the urine. So therefore, you have to produce some urine. It's half a liter per day. You've got to produce some urine. That's why if your kidneys shut down, you die. Because you can't get rid of the solutes.
That's the obligatory.
That's the obligatory urine volume is half a liter per day. Because you have to get rid of these solutes. If you don't, then the osmolality and blood plasma is going to rise. And that's going to mess up the CNS badly. You can get into hyperpolarization, depolarization, that kind of stuff with the neuron in the heart. In fact, we're going to mention that with hyperkalemia, hyperkalemia. Okay, so we're all right? So you know how to calculate it? Okay. Yes, we're all right? Okay, so the thirst mechanism. So why don't you look at the top. So this is a flow chart again. In pink, we're increasing osmolality. We're increasing the amount of solute. So that's going to trigger the osmoreceptors. So we're on the left-hand side. The osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus is going to pick up the fact that we are increasing osmolality. And so that was sent into the thirst centers in the hypothalamus, and then basically, and then you're also going to get, dry mouth and the whole bit. But the thing is that the brain is telling you, the hypothalamus is telling you, because the osmoreceptors, they measure osmolality. And so the osmolality is rising. The plasma is getting hyperosmotic. And what is the normal value? So when we're saying the osmolality is rising, what's the normal osmolality? Supposed to know this. Yes. You guys have this last semester, right? Because when I mentioned about osmolality yesterday, you guys were going like, yeah, I could hear people throwing out some terms. Okay. 300 milliosmoles. there? Yes? Yes. You've got to know this. You've got to know the normal values. Because how are you going to know when it's abnormal? If you have no idea, if you have nothing to compare it to. Okay? You guys are moving into the health field. You've got to act like if you know it. Not act like it. You've got to know it. Good? All right, so, if you are role models for your patients, think about it. If you go to the doctor or a nurse practitioner and she weighs 300 pounds and she comes in and goes like, I think you need to lose weight. And then, she weighs 300 pounds. So what kind of role model is that going to be? And you don't think you are, but you are. You are a role model for your patients because they trust you. They expect you to know more than them. Otherwise, why would they come to you? Why would I go to a doctor if I knew more than the doctor did? Right? Agree? So therefore, you have to have the knowledge to be able to establish the trust with your patients. And you're not going to screw them over, literally. So, because once you break that trust, you'll never get it back again. So, okay, so this is the normal osmolality. Isoosmotic, if you have another solution that's a 300 milliosmos, that means then therefore it is isoosmotic. If you have a solution which is more than 300 milliosmos, it is hyperosmotic. If you have a solution which is below 300 milliosmos, it is hypoosmotic. You need to know these terms because you're going to be giving IVs, and you need to know what kind of IV to give when in terms of, for your patient if you don't kill them. Okay, so that's why it's important. So here, what we're saying that on the left-hand side, the pink box at the top, increasing ECF osmolality. That means that we're rising above 300 milliosmos. We could go to 340, someplace around there. It doesn't have to shoot up to 6,000. You just get a little bit of a rise. The osmoreceptors are going to pick it up, and so that's going to cause you to bring in water. And in turn, on the right-hand side, we see that our blood volume is dropping. And so we talked about the ROS system. That's going to take a little bit longer. This is pretty immediate. This is going to take a little bit longer, but it helps also in increasing blood volume and saving the water. It's going to work on the kidneys themselves. And ultimately, we're going to increase the water intake and also decrease the water excretion. And we're going to basically increase our blood volume, and we're going to dilute that osmolality. We're going to dilute those solutes and bring it back down again. Okay? Yes? We're all right? Okay. All right, so this is what happens in dehydration. So if your osmoreceptors pick up the fact that you don't have enough water, you have dehydration. So notice that you're going to have more solutes in the ECF. You're going to be hyperosmotic. And so where's the water going to go? Where's the body going to get the water from? Yeah, it's going to get it from the cells. So the cells will start to shrink. And so that's why dehydration is deadly. Okay? You can do the opposite. You can overhydrate yourself. And so note in this case, you have a lot more water, you're hypoosmotic, and so now that water is going to move into the cell here because this is hypoosmotic, hyperosmotic. Remember, water always follows solute. So water is going to go into here. It's going to swell the cell. Matter of fact, I think 15 years ago, but I tell you guys, the woman in Modesto that died, she was in some sort of contest to drink so much water in a given amount of time. And she actually died because this is what happened.
If you're not drinking crazy amounts but a lot of water, is it bad for you?
No, not if you don't set it up just like this. Because we'll see the mechanism. You won't have any ADH secreted, and we're going to talk about that. And then you just produce copious amounts of urine. But I think she was drinking, I think they were challenging her to drink, I don't know how many gallons in so much time. And her kidney just could not expel them. That's water fast enough. Okay, that's overhydration. All right. So then now let's look at the nephron itself. Okay, so this filter comes in right here. So here's our PCP, and it is isoosmotic. The filter that comes in is isoosmotic with the tissue. So it's at 300 milliosmos. As it goes down the descending lipid-Henle, we'll see that the descending lipid-Henle is only permeable to water. There are aquaporins in here, and it's permeable to water, and the water is able to leave because we're gonna set up a gradient here. We're gonna set up a sodium chloride, potassium gradient, also with urea. And this is going to be very, very salty. And so water is going to be pulled out of the descending loop of Henle because of the high osmolality here. Then note that how, and so as the water leaves the filtrate itself becomes hyperosmotic. So let's back up. So we're gonna see right here that this is really where it begins. So, you know, this whole story here, well, do you begin like this chicken and the egg situation? Do you start with the egg or do you start with the chicken? So here, so we're going to spend some time right here, and really here's where it starts. Right here we have active transport of NKCC. We talked about that one already before, that transporter, sodium, potassium, and 2 chlorides following. And so they will secrete their, where's my thing? They will secrete their, the sodium, chloride, and potassium out into the interstitium. This is the interstitium. This is the cells and the ICF here. Okay? And so when they do that, they make this tissue really, really salty. And then as the filtrate moves through here on this side, the water leaves because the cells around it, the tissue around it is salty and draws the water out. And plus, that membrane is permeable to water. That means that the inside of the filtrate will become hyperosmotic. Okay? Do we see how we got from isoosmotic to hyperosmotic? How do we get from being isoosmotic to hyperosmotic at the bottom of the loop?
Just water.
Because what left the descending loop in Henle? Water. Okay, so was salt able to leave? No. So therefore, that's why the inside of the descending loop in Henle becomes more hyperosmotic as it goes. Okay? Can you say it again? Okay, so we have an isoosmotic filtrate as it enters into the descending loop of Henle. The descending loop of Henle is permeable only to water but not to salt. Meanwhile, over here in the ascending loop of Henle, there has been active transport. Lots of active transport of sodium, chloride, and potassium. And it stays here in the interstitium. We'll also see that there's going to be the vasa recta, and that also kind of adds a second part to this. But it causes this interstitium, this part of the medulla, to be very, very salty. And that's why it draws water out of the Henle right here, the descending loop. Okay? So then now we have a very hyperosmotic filtrate as it goes up the ascending loop of Henle. In the thin loop, we have passive loss of the sodium chloride. So we have passive loss, and then as we continue up, because we're losing sodium chloride and potassium, then the cell will actively, against this gradient, will actively transport it out. Note that the filtrate in here becomes hypoosmotic. It's gone from 300 to 1200 to now to 100. And it's because water cannot leave, only the salt. So that's why the filtrate at the end of the ascending loop of Henle is hypoosmotic. Okay? Uh-huh. Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know why why the filtrate is hyperosmotic. And then as the filtrate moves up the thin loop of the thin part of the ascending loop of Henle, the sodium chloride is in greater concentrations here than in here. And so some of it's going to start to move out. But the vast majority of the sodium chloride and potassium is actively transported out in the thick loop of the thick part of the ascending loop of Henle.
So in the ascending loop of Henle, salt leaves can.
Salt leaves, that's right, but water cannot.
But
There's
in
no
the
aquaporins.
descending,
In the
water.
descending, the water leaves, but not the salt. Okay? And so, and thus leaving a hypoosmotic filtrate. Are we okay? And then eventually we're going to see see when he gets into the collecting duct, that we're going to see if ADH is not present, antidiuretic hormone is not present, then there's no aquaporins, and then this urine that's going to be secreted will be very hypoosmotic. It'll be very watery. But then we're going to see also eventually that if ADH is secreted, we need to save water. We're going to have aquaporins that will be secreted, that will be inserted in here, and then that will draw water out of the filtrate, and you will produce a very hyperosmotic or concentrated urine. Okay, so let's do it again. So before we go into details. So the filtrate coming from the PCT is isoosmotic, has a value of 300 milliosmoles. As it goes down the descending loop in Henle, water is able to lead through aquaporins, but the salt is not. What is drawing the water out? What is drawing the water out is the salt that has been actively pumped out here in the ascending loop in Henle into the interstitium right here. Makes it very salty. There's the value of the osmolality here in the interstitium. Okay, and so that saltiness draws the water out, but the salt is not able to leave, so the filtrate inside becomes hyperosmotic. And then as it goes up the ascending loop in Henle, you're going to get a passive of the sodium chloride, a little bit of the passivity, but the vast majority of the sodium chloride and potassium is going to be actively pumped out of this ascending loop in Henle, a thick ascending loop in Henle portion. Most of that is going to go into the interstitium to help maintain this osmolality here, the saltiness here. Okay, so since the water is not able to follow the solute, then the filtrate itself is hypoosmotic. It has a value of 100 milliosmoles, and we'll see that if no ADH is secreted, then the hypoosmotic urine or filtrate will become a hypoosmotic urine. Okay, if ADH is secreted, then we'll see that aquaporins will be inserted into the collecting duct membrane, and water will leave this collecting duct, will go into the interstitium, but mainly go into the vasa recta. And then you will produce a hyperosmotic or concentrated urine. Okay? Yes, and we will go through that mechanism. Okay, so we understand about what is hypo, which part of it is hypo, which part of it is iso, and which part of it is hyper. Okay? Okay, good. Okay, so here's the vasa recta. So you basically have between this one and this one, two countercurrent systems. A countercurrent system means that you have fluid that is flowing in one direction on the left, on the descending loop, and then you have fluid that's flowing the opposite direction. And these are really close together, okay? You also have the vasa recta. So your descending loop of Henle's here, your ascending loop of Henle's right here. So these two also set up a countercurrent system. And so you also have a descending and an ascending vasa recta. And so these also act as a countercurrent system. So what this means, a countercurrent system means, is that they're so close together that they can actually exchange things from here to here and vice versa. And so back here, you can actually eventually exchange things from back and forth there. Off our phones, 5 points. So unless some of us can afford to lose it. All right? So let's look at the vasa recta. Yes?
A counter what was that again?
Countercurrent. Countercurrent, right here. Term, countercurrent. Okay? The fish have a countercurrent in their gills. Okay, so let's look at the vasa recta itself, and then, so basically for the vasa recta, so these numbers right here indicate the osmolality of the interstitium, of the tissue surrounding the vasa recta. And they've removed the loop of Henle from here. And so here's the blood from our efferent arteriole. It is isoosmotic. And because it is isoosmotic, because it's higher in salt here than in here, sodium chloride is going to go in and water is going to go out. Because these are capillaries, they are freely permeable to both. Okay? And what's going to go in and out will basically follow their concentration gradients. So as the filtrate, or as the blood moves down the descending vasa recta, we continue to have that until we get down to here. And note that the osmolality of the blood in the vasa recta is equal to the osmolality in the interstitium. Then as the blood goes up the ascending vasa recta, now we have the opposite. The sodium is going to leave and the water is going to come in because this has a higher amount of salt than out here. And then this will continue. Water will come in and sodium chloride will exit. until the point where you, at the end of the ascending vasa recta, it is almost the same as the blood that came in. Okay? Yes? Okay, so here it is together. So you guys figure it out. Some of us are falling asleep already. Maybe we can have a couple people come up and talk about it. No? You've heard of a flipped classroom. They have it's a new teaching thing. The students come up and teach. Okay, go ahead.
I understand it, I'm not really sure on the concept.
Okay, the vasa recta works the same way just like the Liebe Henley, except it's a flow of blood rather than filtrate. It's the same thing. And plus the fact that it is permeable to both things. The Liebe Henley, the descending one on the left-hand side, that one's only permeable to water, and then over here on the right-hand side, it's not permeable to water, while the vasa recta is permeable to both. So that one is going to follow the concentrations. Okay? So here in this one right here, so here's our vasa recta, so they just reversed it. Then here's the blood coming in, okay? And we see the salt coming in, the water leaving all the way around. And then we go back out here. And notice that they're exchanging back and forth too. And they can do that. And notice here, the water that's leaving the descending Liebe Henley. And so when we say the water's leaving the filtrate, it is not going into the interstitium, it actually is going into the vasa recta. So that's how the water is saved. So when we say we're saving water, we're putting it back into the circulatory system, and that's how it maintains the blood volume. Okay? All right? Whereas most of the salt is going to stay in the interstitium. So we need this difference in osmolality in order to save the water. If we don't have the difference, if your osmolality did not come down to 1200 milliosmoles down here, and it was simply 300 milliosmoles down here, as it was up here, you wouldn't have any movement of water. Because this is actively pumped out. This is using ATP. But water moves passively. So if it's 300 milliosmoles in the tissues right here, and 300 milliosmoles in the tissues right here, you wouldn't have any movement of water. Right? Yeah, the water wouldn't leave here because it's still the same. If you have 300 milliosmoles here, 300 milliosmoles down here in the tissues, there's nothing to draw the water out. So by the ascending Liebe Henley actively pumping sodium, chloride, and potassium out into the tissues here, it maintains the osmolality, the higher osmolality. This is called a multiplier system because as a filtrate comes through here and goes through its thing, we have more and more salt that's going to get pumped out. Okay, and then as the blood in the vasa recta comes in, the salt's going to come in, but when it starts to leave the nephron area, the salt's going to leave. So the salt stays in this area, and that's why it's called a countercurrent system, because you have two fluids that are moving in opposite directions, and it's called a multiplier because as a filtrate comes in here, it's going to leave the salt. The salt doesn't take away, so you don't have what we call a washout of salt. So as the filtrate comes through here, the salt is constantly, actively transported out into the interstitium. It goes through the vasa recta as the blood is coming in, but it will exit the vasa recta as the blood leaves, and that will keep it here in the interstitium too. Okay? All right? Okay. Let's see, what else is on here? Oh, the ADH. Okay. So you want to make it simpler, right? Okay. So why don't we let's draw our vasa recta right here. Okay, so if we want to mimic that one, the blood's going to come in this direction, so we'll leave this direction. This is coming from the efferent arteriole. And this is going to go to the paratubular capillaries. out here, we're at 1,200 milliosmoles. Lots of salt. But up here, it's only about 300 milliosmoles. Not so much salt, but a lot. We have more to go, all around, okay? But up here, not so much. And so it's graded, 900, 600, so on. So the osmolality of the blood coming in is what? 300 milliosmoles. Okay? This tissue is saltier, right? Yes. So what's going to leave the blood? Okay? Water. What's going to come into the blood? Salt. Yeah. So water's going to leave. And the salt's going to come in. And so it'll do so until it reaches down here to where it's equal. This is going to be 1,200 milliosmoles, it's going to be equal. And then it's the same setup over here in terms of the osmolality of the interstitium. And so now as the blood goes up, what's going to happen? So what's going to happen when they water, okay? So water left, so then now water's going to come in. Where's the water that's going to come in from? Not the interstitium, from the descending loop of Henle. Good, that's right. And the descending loop of Henle is sitting right next door. See, it's losing water. And so now this water, remember we said when we save water, it's going to go into the vasa recta. And then now what about the salt? So as we go up, it gets less salty, so therefore the salt will work down. And that's why the salt stays in this area here. So are we okay with that? Okay? No, the salt's going to go into the interstitium, which is the tissue of the medulla. Interstitium of medulla layer. So remember, these are your just medullary nephrons. Remember, we had nephrons that were just on the cortex, which were the cortical nephrons, and then we had some which had a long loop of Henle, and then here's just the medullary. And so here's the cortex, and then here's the medulla. And so they use the term interstitium to refer to the tissues around it. Okay. So there's your descending loop of Henle. You can throw in your ascending loop of Henle. You can throw in your ascending loop of Henle. And what's the ascending loop of Henle doing all this time? Releasing what? Yeah. So we're going to draw the ascending loop of Henle, actively pumping out salt, actively pumping out NKCC using that transporter. Sodium, potassium, and 2 chlorides. Remember we did this in digestion. There's the NKCC transporter. So that's going to be pumping it out. It's going to be pumping all this out. Using active transport. And so thus maintaining the saltiness of this interstitium. And then plus the vasa recta helps maintain the saltiness because it dumps out the salt as it leaves this area. Okay? And so this is how we save water. Okay, this is one way we save water. All right, ready to go to the other way you save water? We'll leave this up here because we're going to then add the collecting duct right here. Okay, ready? All right, so ADH is what we're gonna talk about next. Antidiuretic hormone is also called vasopressin because it works all over the body. It's not just that, not just antidiuretic hormone. ADH. Antidiuretic. So you know that you can take diuretics. We talked about that in lab. So what do diuretics do? They cause you to what? Pee. They're going to increase the urine volume. If you have antidiuretic hormone, what's it going to do? What's it going to do to the urine volume?
Decrease.
It's going to decrease the urine volume. So that means if you have antidiuretic, versus a diuretic, you're going to increase the urine volume. So let's say 500 milliliters. Versus if you have ADH, we're down to 10 milliliters of urine. So where did the difference between the two is 490 milliliters. You see that?
Yes.
Here's the potential. If you took diuretics, you're going to be producing 500 mLs per given time. If you had ADH present, you're only going to dump out 10 mLs per given time. So the question is, the difference between this and this is 490, right? Where did the 490 go? Into the vasa recta. This is the circulatory system, into the vasa recta. That's where it went. Okay, so your osmoreceptors and the hypothalamus is going to say that, uh-oh. What kind of uh-oh did it say? So why would you want to have ADH? Does your body need water? Or does your body not need water? It needs water. So what are the two triggers for telling the body it needs water?
Dehydration.
So let's go back to this one right here. So what are the two triggers? Yeah, your osmoreceptors is going to measure what? So those two things in pink, those are the two triggers. Okay? And the fact that those things trigger the body saying we need to save water. Those two things. Okay, so you saw the one on the right, that's for the Roz system to secrete aldosterone, which will then cause this acetylglucohenolate to pump out even more. That's what it does. And then the one on the other side, the osmoreceptors, will also tell the posterior pituitary gland to secrete ADH. Okay, so part of the left side of the flow chart is that the osmoreceptors, the hypothalamus must send information to the posterior pituitary gland, which is right next door to the hypothalamus, and tell it to secrete ADH. Okay, it's a polypeptide type of hormone. Marina, do you have a question before we continue?
What did you say the stimulators were?
We're increasing osmolality. Right here, the two in pink. Or in other words, that means that these fluids in your body is getting saltier. If you're hyperosmotic, that means it's getting saltier than normal. Okay, so ADH is a polypeptide type of hormone, so it cannot go into the cell. It has to bind to an ADH receptor on the collecting duct cells here. It will set into motion the cyclic AMP pathway, and then they will basically see those bubbles. Those are aquaporins, and so they will move them, and they actually will incorporate them into the luminal side of the collecting duct. Okay, so without ADH, you won't have those. But with ADH, you're going to have that. And so because the interstitium is salty on this side right here, the vasa recta is right here. Okay, the acetylglucohenolate is right here. So because it's saltier right here, this draws the water out of the collecting duct and into the vasa recta. Did you get that? Did it comprehend? Okay, so let's draw the. So let's draw the collecting duct right here. So your Ruben Henley's right here, and then let's draw your collecting duct right here. Your collecting duct's right here. Like this. Right next to your Ruben Henley, there's your Vasa recta. Okay? Remember, the filtrate is hypoosmotic coming into the collecting duct. Remember that? The filtrate? So why was it hypoosmotic? What did it have to do with? Yeah, the salt is able to leave the ace in the Ruben Henley, but not water. And that's why this is hypoosmotic. And then as the filtrate comes along here, and if aquaporins were in the membrane right here, that's what ADH does. Okay, ADH binds on the basolateral side of the collecting duct cells, and then they insert the aquaporins on the luminal side. So, and then water is going to leave. Drawn out passively. Water always leaves passively. Drawn out by the salty interstitium here. Okay, and that water is going to go into the vasa recta. Without say.
That's from the collecting duct?
That's from the collecting duct. And then you will produce a very, depending upon how concentrated your urine is, you produce a very hyperosmotic urine. Very concentrated urine.
And the aquaporins will result in ADH.
They have the ADH. And those are the bubbles up there in the picture. Okay?
And that's with ADH, it's hyperosmotic?
ADH is causing the insertion of the aquaporins, those circles right there. They're inserting them into the membrane, and that allows water to leave the filtrate. So that's what these little blue circles are right here. These are the aquaporins, and that will allow water that's in the filtrate to leave this collecting duct. And this water eventually will go into the vasa recta. So that the water is leaving, but the salt is not able to leave the collecting duct, and that's why the urine that is produced is hyperosmotic. Okay? How hyperosmotic it is will depend upon how much ADH is produced. Are we okay so far? Yes? Okay, so interestingly, also urea plays a role in here. So let's talk about urea. Okay, urea, as you know, is a byproduct, it's pretty much a waste product. And so some of it might be reabsorbed a little bit in the PCT, and by the time it gets to the collecting duct, it is somewhat permeable, so you might get a little bit of urea, but the vast majority of the urea is going to end up being urine. But here, if we want to save water, we're going to take advantage of urea also to act like a salt. So here, as the filtrate is coming down here, and the water is leaving this collecting duct, water's leaving this collecting duct here, the salts cannot, and the urea can't leave also as fast as it could. But the thing is that once the aquaporins are present, urea is able to leave eventually after the water because you have created a urea gradient here. Okay? So the solutes stay here as the water leaves, and that's why you have a salty urine. But urea is somewhat permeable in this membrane, so as the concentration of urea increases, as you lose water, that causes more of the urea to leave the collecting duct. And then basically the urea will then go into the ascending Ruben Henley, and then it gets recycled again, and that's called urea recycling. But the urea helps maintain the salty interstitium. So it acts like a salt too. Okay? All right? You want me to do that again? Okay. This is called urea recycling. Normally urea gets dumped out in the urine, the vast majority of it does. But it can be reabsorbed, like in the ECT, you might have a little bit of reabsorb. You can also have it reabsorbed here in the collecting duct. And so your ascending loop is sitting right here. So the small amount of urea that's reabsorbed is insignificant unless ADH is present. When ADH is present, when these aquaporins are inserted into the membrane of these collecting duct cells, the water is going to leave through those openings, through those aquaporins. But the salt and the solutes, including urea, is not able to leave and follow the water. So that means that we form a concentration gradient of urea. And then however, at some point, because these aquaporins are here and modifies the membrane becomes more permeable to the urea. And then the urea is able to leave and goes into the ascending loop Henle. And then as the ascending loop Henle comes up, around again, there's the urea again. So it gets recycled. Up the ascending loop Henle into the collecting duct. Out of the collecting duct into the ascending loop Henle again. Down the collecting duct through the ascending loop Henle. If you don't have the aquaporins, if there's no ADH, then more of the urea is going to leave. You have less urea recycling.
And why would the body want to use urea?
Because the urea helps add to the saltiness of the interstitium. It acts like a salt. As a matter of fact, the sharks use it. The sharks living in a salty environment. So, good question. The ocean is 3.5% salt. Okay, that's the saltiness of our ocean water. We're 0.9%. So if you're a shark in the ocean, this is you. You are the shark. Your tissues are 0.9%. That means that you're going to lose water to the ocean all the time. So you can't do that. So the sharks, what they do is that they don't want to concentrate salt in their tissues. They instead use urea. And they concentrate urea in their tissues. And so that makes them saltier without using salt. So it makes them saltier than the ocean water. So they don't lose water to the ocean.